A 28-year-old struggling actor sits in his tiny apartment in New York City. He has $106 in his bank account. He's so broke he can't afford to heat his apartment. He's so desperate for money that he's sold almost everything he owns. And today he's about to do the hardest thing he's ever done. He's going to sell his dog, his best friend, the only living being that's stuck with him through years of rejection and poverty. Sylvester Stallone walks to a liquor store on the corner and stands outside. He's holding his bull mastiff, Butkus. A stranger walks by and Stallone stops him. "Do you want to buy a dog?" Stallone asks. The man looks at the dog. "How much?" $50, Stallone says, barely holding back tears. The man agrees. He hands over $50. Stallone gives him the leash. He watches his dog walk away. He goes home and cries for hours. He's hit rock bottom. But 3 weeks later, Sylvester Stallone will watch a boxing match on TV that gives him an idea. He'll write a movie script in 3 days. And when producers offer him $360,000 for that script, life-changing money, he'll say no, because they won't let him star in it. They'll think he's crazy. They'll call him delusional. But Stallone will refuse to back down. And eventually he'll get his way. He'll star in the movie. It'll be called Rocky. It'll win the Academy Award for Best Picture. It'll gross over $225 million. And the first thing Sylvester Stallone will do with his money is go back to that liquor store and find the man who bought his dog. He'll offer him $3,000 to buy Butkus back. This is the story of how losing everything and refusing to quit turned a nobody into one of the biggest movie stars in history. Let's rewind to 1946. Sylvester Stallone was born in New York City. His birth was complicated. The doctors used forceps that accidentally severed a nerve in his face, paralyzing part of his lower lip and tongue. That's why Stallone has his iconic slurred speech. Kids made fun of him growing up. He struggled in school. He got into fights. He was angry and lost. After high school, Stallone moved to New York to become an actor. But Hollywood didn't want him. Casting directors told him he looked weird. He talked funny. He wasn't handsome enough to be a leading man. He wasn't ugly enough to be a character actor. He didn't fit. So Stallone took whatever work he could get. Tiny roles, background extra jobs. He appeared in a softcore adult film just to pay rent. He was so broke he sometimes slept in the Port Authority bus terminal because he couldn't afford a room. For years, Stallone auditioned for hundreds of roles. He was rejected every time. By 1975, Stallone was 28 years old. He'd been trying to make it as an actor for almost a decade. He had nothing to show for it. He was married, but his wife was frustrated. They had no money, no future. Stallone couldn't even afford dog food for Butkus, his bull mastiff. He loved that dog more than anything. Butkus had been with him through the worst years, but Stallone couldn't feed him anymore. So he stood outside a liquor store and sold Butkus to a stranger for $50. It was the lowest moment of his life. 3 weeks later, Stallone was watching TV. A boxing match came on. It was March 24th, 1975. Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner. Chuck Wepner was a nobody, a journeyman boxer. Everyone expected Ali to destroy him in the first round. But Wepner didn't quit. He got knocked down over and over. His face was bleeding. He kept getting back up. He lasted all 15 rounds. He lost the fight, but he earned the crowd's respect. Stallone watched the fight and something clicked. He saw himself in Chuck Wepner, a guy who had no business being in the ring but refused to stay down. Stallone had an idea. He went to his typewriter and started writing. For 3 days straight, Stallone wrote nonstop. He barely slept. He barely ate. He poured all his pain, frustration, and hope into the script. When he finished, he had a screenplay called Rocky. It was the story of a small-time boxer from Philadelphia who gets a shot at the heavyweight championship. It wasn't about winning. It was about going the distance, about proving you belong. Stallone knew this script was his shot. He started pitching it to producers. 2 producers, Irwin Winkler and Robert Chartoff, loved the script. They wanted to buy it. They offered Stallone $25,000. Stallone was stunned. $25,000 was more money than he'd ever seen. It could change his life. But there was one condition. They wanted a real star to play Rocky. They were thinking James Caan, Burt Reynolds, or Ryan O'Neal. Somebody famous, somebody bankable. Not Sylvester Stallone. Stallone said no. He told them he wrote Rocky for himself. He had to play Rocky. The producers thought he was insane. "You're a nobody," they said. "You've never carried a film. We're offering you $25,000. Take the money." Stallone refused. The producers raised the offer. $50,000. Stallone said no. They raised it again. $150,000. Stallone said no. They went up to $360,000. Life-changing money. Enough to get out of debt, buy a house, live comfortably for years. Stallone still said no. The producers couldn't believe it. Why would a broke, unknown actor turn down $360,000? Because Stallone knew this was his only chance. If someone else played Rocky and the movie became a hit, Stallone would be forgotten. He'd just be the guy who sold a good script. He'd still be a nobody. But if he played Rocky, even if the movie failed, he'd have tried. He'd have gone the distance. Finally, the producers gave in. They agreed to let Stallone star in Rocky, but they slashed the budget. Instead of a big-budget film, Rocky would be made for only $1 million. They shot it in 28 days. They used real locations in Philadelphia. They couldn't afford extras, so they filmed the famous running scene early in the morning when the streets were empty. They couldn't afford a big composer, so Bill Conti wrote the iconic theme on a tight budget. Stallone rewrote scenes on set. He did his own stunts. He got actually hit during the fight scenes. His body was covered in bruises, but he didn't care. This was his shot. Rocky was released on November 21st, 1976. Critics loved it. Audiences loved it. It became a cultural phenomenon. The film made over $225 million worldwide on a $1 million budget. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards. It won 3, including Best Picture. Sylvester Stallone became a star overnight. He went from sleeping in bus terminals to walking red carpets. And the first thing he did with his money? He went back to the liquor store where he'd sold Butkus. He found the man who'd bought his dog. Stallone offered him $500 to buy Butkus back. The man said no. Stallone offered $1,000. The man said no. Stallone kept raising the offer. Finally, the man agreed to sell Butkus back for $3,000. And Stallone paid it. He got his dog back. Butkus even appeared in Rocky and Rocky II. Stallone went on to create one of the most iconic franchises in film history. There are now 8 Rocky films and 3 Creed spin-offs. The franchise has grossed over $1.7 billion. Stallone became one of the biggest action stars of all time, with Rambo, The Expendables, and dozens of other films. He's worth over $400 million today. So what happened? Stallone had been rejected hundreds of times, but he didn't let rejection define him. He used it as fuel. Every no made him more determined. When Stallone sold his dog, he hit rock bottom. But instead of giving up, he channeled that pain into creativity. He wrote Rocky in 3 days because he had nothing left to lose. Stallone was offered $360,000 to sell his script. For a broke actor, that was a fortune. But he knew that money wouldn't matter if he wasn't the one playing Rocky. He bet on himself. He risked everything, and it paid off. Stallone didn't just want to be rich. He wanted to prove he belonged. He wanted to go the distance. And that hunger, that refusal to quit, is what made him a legend. Sylvester Stallone sold his dog for $50. Slept in a bus terminal. Got rejected hundreds of times. Then he wrote Rocky in 3 days, turned down $360,000, and bet everything on himself. And it made him an icon. Because sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to stay down.